Hello, it is I, Andrine, Jewish American Priestess, here for another Hebrew reading today. We are in a dark time of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere, the month of Kislev, and we're just about coming up on the solstice. It's about a week away, so we still have a little bit of the light that is diminishing. So light up some candles to bring some more light into this moment, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And today we're going to do, a reading with some of these Mythologia Finnica cards from the Finnish mythology. And I'm going to go ahead, let me slide that out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle and see if we can get 3 cards today. Do 3 readings. Maybe I'll pull out the Nordic runes as well, and maybe an oracle card or 2. We'll see. There's one. I'll have the spirit guide today. As always, because what else could we do? Spirit is always guiding some way or the other, whether we're aware of it or not. There's our 3rd one. Okay. Let's take a look at our cards and see what our stories are today. The first card is the Lass of Tuonela. We've seen her before. The second card is the Beginning. I love this one. And the third card is Ilmarinen. We've also seen him before. So take a moment. If you've been here before, maybe you know some of these stories. But take a moment and decide which one of these is appealing to you. The Lass of Tuonela, the Beginning, or Ilmarinen. I love it. They're all actually major arcana cards as they correspond to the regular tarot. And we'll get into that when we get into the reading. But you decide based on the pictures or how you feel about each of these, which one is calling to you today. And we will do a reading based on that. I'll put the timestamps down below. So take a moment, as long as you need, if you need to pause and really feel into it, and then we'll see you at your reading. Hello, people of the Lass of Tuonela. I'll show you this card. Oop. So the Lass of Tuonela is loosely corresponding to the Death card in the traditional tarot. You can see it's the number 13. And she is a female character who ferries the dead across the river of Tuonela, the river of the dead. And you can see the swan swimming back in the corner there. I'll show you the bigger picture of it on the cover of the book. You can see that the boat itself has the head of an elk or a moose. And she carries the dead to their final resting place. So, death card could be a scary card, but for those of you who understand about the death card, it's not about literal death most frequently. It's about transformation, about changes and transitions to a new stage of life. The old gives way to the new, and there are sometimes outward changes or rebirth, some kind of renewal that comes after. She is the one who ferries the dead over the Black River of Tuonela to the island of Manala, and it is it's an island where there's an internal fire burning in the center of it, with smoke and mist all covering around it. And again, you see the swan, and the swan is symbolic of a soul bird. It's believed that a person's soul transforms into a bird upon death and leaves the body with the last breath. So it's about transformation. That's what we're talking about today in your reading. Some kind of transformation is up, and I'm going to set her right here. And let's take out, just take out some Hebrunes today. I think I'm going to just do a cast, like just toss them down and see what comes up. I'm going to start a handful. I'm not going to toss all of them. I'm going to pick them up in the bag, grab a big handful, and then we'll see what position they show up in. Ooh, it's a lot. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to turn them all upright so I can read them better. We're not going to do reversals with the Hebrunes, but I am going to take out the ones that are face down. That's the first thing we do. Take out the ones that are face down and leave the ones that landed face up. Put them into some sort of semblance of order. And I'll try to get them in camera range here. So I'll leave it like that. Put the rest of these back in the bag. And let me tilt this down slightly so we can see a little better. There we go. Okay. Slide them down just a hair. Okay, so let's take a look and see what we've got going on today. So from where I sit, the central issue appears to be the Samekh. And Samekh is a letter of being surrounded with love. It's the word that the letter that begins the word sovev, which means surrounded. And it's about circles and cycles and seasons. You know, boundaries, in fact. It's about boundaries. It also, in the Paleo Hebrew, is a thorn. So it looks like a thorn in the ancient or Proto-Hebrew alphabet. And you can see on the upper left that there's a little bit of a thorn, a little vestigial thorn. It is connected to the foundation of agitation. In the Sefer Yetzirah, each of the letters corresponds to some sort of foundation, concept, idea, characteristic. And Samekh corresponds to agitation. So, and that can be positive agitation, it can be excitement, or it can be negative agitation as well, anger, stress of some kind. It is said that in ancient times people would use a thorn hedge around their property in order to protect their property from invaders and also to keep their livestock in. So it's about setting boundaries. It's about setting boundaries with some sort of protective thorn. Like a rose has thorns to protect itself. It's a beautiful thing, but it has this thorn so that nobody just grabs it without thought. You have to be very mindful when you grab a rose. So yeah, it's about this, and it's about cycles and circles. So something that's going on. We've got, again, in the transition of seasons coming up here as we're coming into the very, very late fall and transitioning into winter in my neighborhood. As we hit the solstice, as the sun goes to its darkest of days and then starts to come back. So this transition of light into darkness and then back into light really corresponds to this death card, because we are in this transitional phase right now. So yeah, that's the central issue. We've got this idea of, and frankly, Samik corresponds to the month of Kislev. So it is, it's the letter that corresponds to this particular month. So that's what's up, our transition, our cycle of the year, this time of darkness and agitation, perhaps, as we move through the darkness into the light. It corresponds to the constellation Sagittarius, which is the time we are in right now, and the right hand in the body. And so it has to, again, it has to do with cycles and seasons, wheels, transitions and change. So that's incredibly appropriate for where we are right now in the year, and also with the card, the Lass of Tuonela. I'm going to go with what's on the upper left. We're going to start from the upper left here. And here we have the letter Pe. And the letter Pe is, it's representative of mouth, the mouth of the divine actually speaking creation into existence. And it also corresponds to the number 80 in Gematria. So it has to do with infinity. It has to do with the infinite and time as well. The word pa'am, time in Hebrew, starts with the Pe. So we've had these cycles that have been going on in these spirals. So we've got both a circle and a spiral, and they both have to do with time and transition. It can be like a labyrinth, as you know, which is in ancient stories about a test that one must pass in order to come to enlightenment. And so what's come before now, up here in the upper left, is this idea of the infinite cycles coming into being, and also communication, something about communication and the binary foundation of grace and ugliness is affiliated with Pe. I think in part because the word face is panay. It's about beauty or ugliness, I guess, or somewhere on that continuum. So we have this thing that came before that is somewhere along that continuum between beauty and ugliness and communication and speech. So maybe something has been spoken, maybe beautiful words or maybe ugly words, but since it's up above, we're hoping that it's beautiful words since it's above this the Samik on this reading. So we've had something about the infinite, this infinite time, this cycle, and something beautiful, or at least something that is timeless, that's been spoken into existence, maybe through a blessing, maybe through some sort of communication, something that's going to bring us through a transition to the next phase. The letter Pe, that's going to go up here. And even prior to that, we've had the Tet, and the Tet is, it's the first letter of the word Tov, which means goodness, or good. Since it's on like the path line, is on the same line as the Samik, I'm going to say something good has come before. And Tet is, it's the number 9 in Gematria, so it corresponds to the 9 months of gestation in the body. So we have these 9 months, some idea that's been gestating, something good that's been gestating for some time. I love that if you put Tet on its side, it looks like a Pe. So it also seems to have to do with an infinite. It's a vessel, but it's a vessel that holds goodness, and it's again got that sort of spiral shape in this particular case, so it looks like the Pe if you set it on its side. So it's it also has to do with the infinite cycle of death and rebirth. And since we've had this gestation that's come before now, we've got something that is being birthed now, or birth and death. They're very close together in how they feel. If you've ever given birth, it feels like dying, and yet something good comes from it. And transitions are like that. Sometimes births feel like a death, and sometimes deaths feel like a birth. So that's what's come before, is we've had this gestation period and this infinite time that's gone on. This communication of beauty. And below that, maybe this is like the stuff that's below seems to be about maybe fears or concerns, challenges. And the letter Lamed is the one letter in Hebrew that reaches above the line. And it's the letter that begins the word lev, so it's about heart. It's about reaching up with heart, having some kind of aspiration, and also teaching and learning. Both start with Lamed. So it's about this elevation of the heart toward the divine. It's about sort of about, again, reaching up with the heart. And since it's below, it's like it's on the lower part of the reading. There's either been a concern about that, maybe one hasn't felt the heart to reach up to the divine, or one has been reaching up with a false heart, maybe not quite understanding or grasping what it is divinity wants from you. Maybe fooling oneself about what is wanted, what is needed, what your heart actually, maybe not being able to hear your heart clearly about what it wants. So some challenge around that has come just before now too. And I'm going to go back up to the top here. The thing that again above and a little bit before now, maybe very recently, we have this letter Zayin, and Zayin is about power. It is it's a sword or a scepter, so it has about sovereignty and magic too. It is the number 7, so it can have to do with the completion of a thing, like 7 days of creation. So something maybe has come to an end, and since it is the number 7, it has to do with the day of Shabbat. So about rest, about coming to the end of a thing and resting. Maybe resting as one transitions across the river of Tuonela. There's some kind of a rest that is in order after some kind of use of power, about some kind of wielding of power, or maybe stepping into one's sovereignty. It corresponds to the idea of luck. The number 7 has a lot to do with luck. There's a lot of magic around the number 7. There's like the 7 days of creation. There's the 7 weeks of counting of the Omer. There's the 7 years of the Shemitah. All these different cycles of 7. And since it's right next to the Pei, between the Pei and the Samik, it maybe has to do with a cycle, some kind of cycle that needs to play out here. And maybe come to an end. That there's some cycle that's been going on for a really long time, and it needs to come to an end here. That's what I'm getting, since we have the lass of Tuonela who's transporting souls to the realm of the dead, that there's something gestated. It's been going on for an infinite amount of time, and now it's time for it to come to an end here as we transition through this infinity through end into a new cycle here with the Samik. And below that is Dalet. And interestingly, Dalet for me, it's a doorway, it's a gateway. and it's the binary foundation of wisdom and foolishness. So something, because it's a little bit lower, it's not on the path line, it's a little lower than the path, it makes me think it's about foolishness. There's been something foolish that's happened, and for me, Dalit corresponds to the death card, the same card as the Lath of Tuonela. So there's been some sort of gateway, some sort of doorway that's happened just before now that has caused a transition, some door that has passed through that is like a death, that is like a transition to death. Yeah, something foolish, or like in the direction of foolishness, at least not wise, happened. Something not wise has happened. Maybe there's some humility involved. The Dalit has to do with humility and humbleness. So somebody's been humbled, and also, yeah, doing some kind of transition. This ending has caused a death and a transition. And way down below, we've got the letter Yud, and it is it's like the one point that is like a seed, or the atom that makes up the entire universe. It's the first letter of the divine name, so it's an incredibly holy letter, but it's way down here, which makes me wonder whether, like, again, like I said, somebody has been using their heart in a way to reach up to the divine, but not with wisdom, not wisely. There's been some action or activity. This is also has to do with action, because it's the word yad, which means hand, begins with the letter yud. So some hand, somebody's had a hand in something that has not been as maybe sacred as they had hoped. It is the smallest letter, and it corresponds to the foundation of sexuality. So maybe some sexual impropriety or something inappropriate that has gone on, because it's way, way, way down low. That's causing this frustration, this death, this ending that's going into the transition. Yud, yeah, being the smallest point, it's this very, very small thing that holds a lot within it, like a seed or like a sperm, that could hold a whole person, or half a person in it. But the potential for even a whole tribe of people is within one seed, one sperm. But if it's misused, if it's down here, really, really low, it can bring about that confusion about the heart, or that ending, that doorway that means death, that means that transition. So, as we move to the right here, we move into the next section. I'm seeing the next letter over is also down low, and it's the Gimel. The Gimel is about movement. It's about forward movement. It is it's the word camel is gamal is starts with the Gimel, and it's about walking forward, about forward movement, about it's a foot, like it's walking forward as it looks like a little boot. So it has associations with moving ahead, and yet it's really down. It's down low here. It's close to the Yud, so it's moving forward, maybe stumbling forward, maybe not quite knowing what is happening. What's the next step is where I'm getting. Not quite grasping what the next step should be. It is the foundation of peace and evil. When we say peace, like shalom, that doesn't just mean absence of conflict. It means wholeness. And evil, the word is evil. It's also translated as wickedness, so like intentionally, or maybe even unintentionally doing things that are inappropriate or wicked. So there's this binary of wholeness or wickedness, and since it's low, I'm guessing that it's not been that there's this stumbling forward, not knowing what the next step is, and maybe not knowing what's the righteous thing to do. I say that because Gimel is associated with the planet of Jupiter, which in Hebrew is called tzedek, and tzedek means justice. So it's sometimes Gimel is about running toward justice, running forward to do something righteous and good. But since it's down really low, maybe not knowing what's the just or righteous thing to do and making some stumbling motions forward. Yeah. So the next steps are unknown, maybe questionable, maybe not clear, maybe really need to sit with what's the right, just thing to do. Okay, and the shin, which is here, it's sort of on the path line, it's a little bit lower. It's the mother letter of fire, and it is, it's the letter that represents the creation element of fire. So shin looks like 3 flames kind of flickering up here, and it has this connection to creation. It's like one of the very basic elements. It corresponds to the above place. The other 2 creation elements are air, which is in that middle place where we live, and water, which is in the place below where we can't live. And we can't live up where the sun is, and we can't live down where the water is. We live in the middle place. But shin represents that above place, the sky, sort of in the world, or the sun in the sky, and in the head, in your body. So it's very similar. It has this passion affiliated with it. So passion, or could be anger, and the summer in the year. So it governs over space, time, and the body, soul, and it's corresponding to a bunch of different really important words. Shalom, which is wholeness, and Shekhinah, which is indwelling presence, Shana, which is sleep, and Shana, which is year. So again, about cycles and change, Shini, which is change. So we've got, again, infinite change. We've got death, the death card with change, the loss of Tuonela. We've got the Samech with cycles and change, and then the Shin also with this idea of cycles and changes. A lot of change going on here in this reading, and something hot, something fiery, something passionate happening. And since it's slightly lower, I mean, I consider this still sort of the path line, but maybe a little dip in the path, saying maybe a detour for some anger going on here, or some kind of cycle that is a little fiery, a little hot in the near future. And maybe because we can't figure out what direction to go. Maybe because we've got this confusion about what direction is righteousness. We've got a little bit of anger, or something hot, something passionate here, something flaring up, let's just say. And so then a little bit to the right we have, and a little low, is the letter Kuf. And the letter Kuf, it is... It's the first letter of the word kadosh, or kodesh, which means holiness, or that which is designated for service toward the divine. So its opposite is kol, which is sand. So either something is sand if you live in the desert, or it is special in that it is designated for divine service. And the letter kuf is that which is designated for service. But it also is the first letter of the word klipa, klipa meaning shells or shards of the shattered holy vessels that have fallen into the world and cause irritation. So it's got both of those connotations to it. It is corresponding with the foundation of sleep, which is perfect for this season where it's dark and everybody wants to hibernate. It's the only letter in the Hebrew alphabet besides the final letters that goes below the line, and so it's like something reaching down into the world, either to search for those shards or the sparks of divinity, or some scholars say it's because it's being too earthly. It's trying to avoid righteousness and holiness. It also is the first letter of the word kof, which means monkey, and it looks like a little bit of like a monkey's tail here on the right. And it has to do with our animalistic nature, which just wants to play and have fun in the world. So it drops below the line, and some people say it looks like a resh and a zayin next to each other, which would spell out raz or zar, so secret or stranger. So it has to do with secrets, maybe strangeness, maybe something that is hidden. Let's just say something that is hidden. And it could be holiness that's being hidden. But since this is down low here, I'm guessing that it's more along the lines of something has been kept a secret, and it needs to be illuminated with those divine sparks. It is the number 100 in Gematria, so it is 10 times 10, which is that ultimate manifestation of the Yud being the seed, or that single point, which is the first letter of the name of the divine. So again, since this is low, it's interesting that we have both of these incredibly holy letters on below the path line, which indicates possibly someone has been using spirituality for a purpose that is maybe not holy, maybe that's more earthly, that's more animalistic, and that's something worth looking into to find out, to root out in you what it is that isn't serving, what isn't righteous here, what isn't happening that's something that could be maybe more centered on elevation and life than on death. And then our final letter in the reading is the letter Tav, and that's appropriate because Tav is the final letter of the alphabet, and it stands for a stamp or a seal, and it is on the path line. It's right in line with the Samech. So I would say that it has to do with completion again, coming to the end of a thing, finding. This is not focusing very well. There we go. Finding the way to bring this situation to completion. Again, as a wheel goes around or as a spiral goes in, how can we find completion through this transformation of death, or death and rebirth that we're coming into? The Tav is, it's not, some say it's not, it's like the extra letter, it's like a signature. It's the signature of the divine that is being just put like a stamp at the end of the creation. So it's the last letter in the word emet, so maybe it's about finding truth within your situation, and it has to do with the moon in the sky, and the binary of sovereignty and slavery. So since it's on the path line, I'm guessing that it's saying, find out how to become a sovereign of your situation and not become enslaved to these things that have dragged us down. Yeah, I think that's what it's about. How to seal this situation, how to seal it for good. Ideally, we've got the tet over there for tov, and then the tav over here, which actually, frankly, sounds like tov. Tav and tov are very similar, although they're different words. But it's not an accident when in Hebrew words sound similar. I see that as a synchronicity, not a mistranslation. And because we have the tet here at the beginning with tov, and then we end with tav, I'm just saying that's a synchronicity that is worth looking at. So as I said, we started with the Samech, which is about cycles and circles and completion. and as our central issue. But we have this spiral up here, which is something that's been going on infinitely. We have power, the sword and the scepter here, sovereignty of oneself, again with sovereignty, and way in the back we've got this goodness that was attempt. The three that are on our central line here are the Tet, the Samik, and the Taf. Everything else is above or below. So we have this idea of goodness, this intention for goodness, and hopefully coming to the final transformation after all of this mess, after we've gone through the doorway of death, after we've attempted to reach up but been maybe confused about how to use our heart, how to use love in this, but maybe really misappropriating the divine name down below, not knowing what way to go for justice, coming into a time of maybe passion, a time of grief, maybe even heat, something hot, anger and or passion or grief about about reaching down to the really the basest of instincts, the very animalistic nature, instead of relying on holiness. And that's bringing us to this ending, hopefully a transformation through a metaphorical death into something transformative in the end. And I'm going to pull out one Nordic rune just to give us a little clarity on a different tradition. And we have the letter Isa. You can see that. That looks just like a straight line. It represents ice. So as a guidance for this situation, it would be really helpful to just sit still with whatever's coming up to determine what this transformation is going to birth. What is going to be the final outcome for you? And I think that if one spends some time in stillness, there will be clarity also. And I'm going to pull out one of these oracle cards as well, just to see if there's just one more message for you here. And here it is, flying out. It says knowledge. Seek understanding. Look beyond your assumptions. And know that your answer already exists. Knowledge. So, for those of you who chose the Lass of Tuonela, our fairy woman who's taking us through this transformation, this has been your reading. I hope it's been illuminating for you. I think again, the answer is seek your understanding, but know that that answer is already within you. Sit with it. Listen for yourself. Maybe, focus on wisdom. Focus on finding your wisdom and pulling yourself out of the foolishness. And I hope I hope it's helpful to help you through your situation here. And for those of you who chose the Lass of Tuonela, that's been your reading, and I hope to see you here again next time. Hello, people of the beginning. So this card that is entitled The Beginning is correspondent, I would say roughly, pretty directly to the Fool card. It is the number 0. It is the beginning of things. The Fool card is about setting out. And it's got a really interesting story. This is the creation myth of the Finnish mythology. And it is, so it's told in the Kalavala, which is that ancient runic poem, that the world originated from an egg, or from a bunch of eggs, I guess, from this diving duck. So the goddess of the air, who is Ilmatar, had descended into the sea, and she saw a duck, a diving duck. Now, to me, it looks a little bit like a loon, which is kind of hilarious, considering that the fool is sort of like a, sounds like the loon, you know, is like somebody who's loony or foolish. So this diving duck came, and she saw it on the waves, and she had compassion for it. So she put her knee above the water so that the duck could land there, and it built a nest. And in its nest, it laid 7 eggs. 6 of them were made of gold, and the 7th one was made of iron. And they began to gestate. They began to, the duck sat on them to hatch them, and the knee became warmer and warmer, and the eggs got hotter and hotter until Ilmatar couldn't handle it anymore, and she moved her knee, and the eggs rolled into the water, and they shattered. The golden eggs shattered, and the iron egg dropped to the bottom of the sea. And out of the eggshells formed the dome of the sky and the heavens, and the bottom of the eggshells formed the bottom of the sea, and the speckles in the eggshells made the stars, and one of the egg yolks went up and became the sun, and the egg white became the moon, and then Ilmatar had the primordial materials with which to build the lands. So it's this really wonderful story about a duck and its eggs and the sky and the sea and the building materials for the land. So it's about new beginnings. It's about changes that bring about freedom, independence, taking risks, new ideas, spiritual growth, and listening to one's heart. So that's that's what this reading is about today. It's about beginnings. It's about new beginnings. I love this card. It's so beautiful. But yeah, it's about setting forth into a brand new, unformed, unknown that's coming for you. So that's our basic theme of your reading today. And I'm going to go ahead and set that right here where we can continue to see it. And I'm going to pull out a handful of Hebrunes today. And I'm just going to reach into the bag and grab a handful and do a scatter cast. And we'll see what comes up. I'm going to grab a bunch. I'll shake them up real good first to make sure I have a nice mix. And I'm going to go ahead and cast them down, and then we'll see what our reading is about today. A lot of them really want to come out today. We'll see what happens. Okay, here we go. Wow, interesting. So we have a lot of them here, but they're not all upright. And so how I do this is I set the ones that are face up with the letters up so that I can read them. And then all the rest of them go back in the bag. Great. So then we read what's there. And we may throw out some others later on. But let's see what we have here now. So our central issue, the one right in the middle here. So the way I see this, this is the path line, this is the central, and this is past and above, and this is future and below. Okay. It's a beautiful reading. So our central issue is the Lamed. And the Lamed is the one letter in Hebrew that reaches above the line. So it is considered one that is reaching up for connection with divinity. It's this it's this letter that has this high aspirations, elevation toward the divine. It also speaks to heart. The word for heart in Hebrew is lev, which begins with the letter lamed. So it's like reaching up with heart toward the heavens. And it also has to do with teaching and learning. So those are the central issues here. It's about elevating of the heart toward the divine, education, both parts of education, both the teaching part and the learning part. Some sort of education is coming out of this. It also, interestingly, has to do with the intestines in the body, and I think it's fascinating. As I sat with this letter, noticing how it looks like the digestive tract is an esophagus, and then it kind of curves over and turns into, intestines. It's a very simplified version of the digestive system. But in some ways, when I think about it, learning is sort of digestive in that you're absorbing information and trying to make sense of it and using the parts that work for you and letting go of what doesn't. So there's something very deep about the lamed in terms of that. And it corresponds with action in the world as well. Its foundation is action. And it just seems, it's about elevation and reaching up in order to learn, in order to connect and learn something spiritual. So not dissimilar to the beginning card here, that it has this spiritual connection, this attempt. So the story of Ilmatar, she calls out to the heavens, to her father Ukko, the sky god, and she asks him, she's lonely, so she asks him for help, and he sends this diving duck. So it's like she reaches up with her heart for companionship, and she receives this diving duck who, although it seems like there's a crisis, right, in that the eggs all break and crash, it still allows for the creation of the land and the sky and the sun and the moon and the stars. So even when things appear to be broken, there's something worth learning from that experience. So that's our central issue, is lamed here today. And then we're going to go backwards here. So what came before is the letter Vav up here in the upper left, and Vav is about connection. It's the letter that in Hebrew literally means and. It's this tall, straight, it's supposed to be a standing person, but it's also got a little bit of a bowed head. So there's a little bit of humility that goes along with it. It's sort of like a spine, also like a spine of a human being, or a taproot that penetrates into the ground. So it's this connection between earth and heaven. It's a connection between humanity and divinity. It's also a peg or a hook. In ancient times, they were used to connect the walls of the Mishkan, the temporary temple in the desert, to the ground. It would tether them to the ground, and also to connect them to each other, and also the veils of the Holy of Holies, which surrounded the Holy Ark, were connected together with these pegs or hooks. And they were often made of silver or gold, so they're quite valuable, quite important and worthy, like really had value, really had some strong value. So even though they're small connectors, they still have this enormous amount of value. So it's about uniting with divinity, about standing tall, about having a little bit of a humility, a little bit of a bowed head there. And it also has to do with the number 6. So it is the number 6 in Gematria, which is representative of the 6 days of creation, the day that that the divine finished creating the earth, just like here with the diving duck. The creation was finished, and they had not yet rested. So it has a completion element to it. Like things are almost done. There's almost completion here. And here it is in our reading in the past and a little bit higher than the path line. So we've got this idea of connection that was this lofty goal of reaching up and wanting connection with the divine was what came before here. It was this attempt by whoever is reading this is to connect. There was a valuable attempt to connect with divinity and create something new, maybe complete a creation, have some kind of some kind of completion here with the number 6. And it corresponds to the tribe of Issachar, and the tribe of Issachar is said to unite wealth and study. So that idea of value and studying of Torah, like about learning. So it also connects to the Lamed in that it's about connection and learning. The tribe of Issachar. So that's what's come before us. And just before this central issue, we've got the letter Nun. And the letter Nun is about humility. It is the letter that is said to be a humble person, somebody who is bowed over and kneeling and has their head bent. It means humble. So the word ne'eman means humble, or maybe somebody who's a faithful servant. And so it's about humility, loyalty. It also means bent, like to be bent over. And it also corresponds to this time of year when we're playing dreidel for Hanukkah, the word nes, which means miracle. Nes gadol hayasham, a great miracle happened here, are the letters on the dreidel. So there's some kind of miraculous thing that comes out of this humility that's come just before our present moment. Yeah, I see it as humility and faithfulness. There's been some kind of faithfulness. It also corresponds to locomotion in the foundations in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. Each of the letters corresponds to some sort of foundation. And Nun corresponds to the foundation of locomotion, which is movement forward, but it's steady, increasing movement, like a locomotive train, where it's like starts out slow, but it goes regularly and steadily until it's moving and chugging along at a brisk pace. But it starts out slow. So something that's come right before now has that sense of starting out slowly with humility and building up momentum as it charges forward. You know, like the diving duck here, it came, it didn't just create the world, it came and it did its job. It started by laying its eggs and then feathering its nest and then sitting on those eggs and, waiting for the time to be ripe for the world to be created out of those eggs. So we've got that happening right before the now, which is, again, this elevation with heart, this learning and this teaching that needs to happen. And the next thing in our reading is the letter Mem, and it's again on the path line. This is what's coming up next is the Mem, and Mem is the creation element, mother letter of water. And I love that with this card, because all we have is water to begin with. We only have the water. We don't have anything but water when this creation story begins. Water is this gestation fluid, this amniotic fluid in which we are all born, from which we all come into being. And it's about transformation as well. water is used for cleansing in terms of like a mikvah or, any kind of bath, but like a mikvah is a ritual cleansing where one goes in and removes all of their impurities through immersion in water. And it has to do with the wet season. Right now, in my part of the world, is the cold, wet season. So Mem corresponds to things right now in the world, in this part of the world anyway. I see Mem as corresponding to Rachem, which means womb. The Mem is a womb. It is a container that has a small opening at the bottom. It's the number 40 in Gematria, so it corresponds to the 40 weeks of gestation in the human body. So it's like a womb. So Rachamim, which is the one who has a womb. And also El Shaddai, who is the breasted one, the one who feeds the children as well. So it's a lot going on here about gestation. Something is coming up in the very near future that will have to do with gestation, maybe about cleansing. Maybe something needs to be cleansed with water, with emotion. It has to do with the emotional world, that whole flowing water, the feelings that are maybe grief, could be tears, a lot of emotions tied up in the letter Mem. And the number 40, has a lot of connotations also in the Torah. We've got the 40 years in the wilderness, the 40 years of wandering, the 40 days of rain for the Ark and Noah, and the 40 days on Mount Sinai that Moses went up to receive Torah. So again, back to learning again. So a lot of 40s, a lot of cycles of 40 in the Torah. So something's coming up that is a gestation period. It's a time of maybe being in a meditative state, or like I said, a cleansing state, where we're looking at trying to learn what we're learning from our current situation. It's like, even though things were crashed and tragic, there is this something to learn from it, and maybe we just need to sit and gestate and think about what it is we're learning here. And then coming up in the future, and again on the lower line, we have the letter Samech. And Samech is about boundaries, right? So it's about it's being surrounded with protection and with love, but it's also just about boundaries. In the Paleo or Proto-Hebrew, it was a thorn. So you can see a little bit of a thorn up on the upper left there. So the thorn is the thing that protects, and can be used to surround a field or a homestead with a thorny hedge so that animals can't get out and predators can't get in. So it's about protecting. It's about being surrounded, but there is a agitation to it. It has a foundation of agitation. So there's a thorniness to it. And since it's on the lower line, my guess is that agitation is irritability, maybe irritation. But setting up boundaries, which is an essential thing. It's again the same thing about the creation, that after that brokenness, those broken pieces were used to set the sky, to set the limits of the ocean, to set the edges of the world. So even through all of this, through what we're learning, through the humility that we've come from, through that attempt to connect with divinity, which maybe turned into a little bit of a catastrophe, but out of that we get to spend some time gestating in that water and set some new boundaries here. Even if we're irritated, or maybe because we're irritated, we get to set some boundaries. And that seems to be what our reading is about today. I'm going to I'm going to pull out a Nordic rune that will maybe give us a little bit of advice for our situation here. Yeah, I'm just going to reach in the Nordic rune bags and see what comes up for what's our advice for right now in this situation we're in. Okay, so this is the letter Nauthies. If it's possible to see that. There we go. So it's a letter that it means needs or necessities, and it's about constraint. It's about resistance and caution, maybe conflict and the will to overcome a thing. So it's about need. It's about taking care of one's needs, either emotionally or physically. If there's some kind of emergency that needs to be taken care of, you should just drop everything and do that. But it's similar. It's not the same as, but it's similar to the Samic in that it's about taking care of yourself, setting up appropriate boundaries. So as we move forward at this time, we're going to put Nauthies right here. Nauthies is here to tell us that as we're going through this learning period of time, we need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of our needs. Maybe that means setting up boundaries. Maybe that means taking care of our bodies by tending to making sure we get adequate, nutritious food, getting enough sleep, maybe moving, maybe getting some more exercise in our life, especially in this dark time of year if we're having some challenges. That the appropriate thing to do right now is we're maybe dealing with some perceived crisis, to know that trust that it's going to turn out for the best, even though we may not be able to see that right now, that we'll be able to extract some kind of lesson from our situation. And when we do take care of our needs, maybe that means cleansing ourselves, maybe that means taking a bath, or doing some kind of mikvah, some kind of ritual that will cleanse us of whatever our situation is here, then we can move forward into a place of better boundaries, more protection for ourselves and our loved ones around us. And then last but not least, I'm going to pull out an oracle card that will maybe give us one more message for our reading about the beginning today. Let's see what we got. Pull this one that's sticking out here. Okay, so we have the card of reflection, and it says, take time for deep thoughts. Notice the ripples you create and softly mirror your truth to the world as you discover it. And I think that's beautiful. That's perfect for this reading. As we're told here, that it is best to take some time to gestate what's just happened, to really sit with our lessons here. Whatever it is, as we've been reaching up with heart, trying to determine what it is, what's the life lesson we're learning from this situation right now. We've been reaching up with heart, maybe trying to digest our situation. We've just come out of a time of humility, of really, trying to establish our loyalty after reaching out for connection. Maybe we've got into a time of humility. Now we're reaching up with heart toward connection and trying to learn what we need to learn, teach what we need to teach, and then moving forward into a time of gestation and really gestation and cleansing and figuring out what it is, where we should be moving to, what is being birthed out of this situation, and then we get into this place of protection, this place of protection and being surrounded with protection, maybe a little agitated, but protected nonetheless. Taking care of our own needs and then reflecting as we need to noticing the ripples, noticing the water, noticing the ripples that are coming out of our situation, and mirroring our own truth to the world as we discover it. I think that's a lovely reading for this this new beginning that's coming up for you. This time of birth and gestation, and maybe even crisis, and then ending up in a space of boundaries and protection. And I, again, just love the beauty of this card, the beauty of this story. And I appreciate you sticking it out with me as we go through these long readings, but I think they're worthwhile, and I hope you find that they are too. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Welcome, the people of Ilmarinen. So Ilmarinen is the card that corresponds roughly to the Magician in the traditional tarot deck. It's card number 1, and he is the magical smith of Kalavala. He was able to make pretty much anything out of anything, or out of nothing even. His story is that he's one of 3 brothers who was born to Ilmatar, the creatrix, the mother who was the sky spirit and then became the water spirit as she fell to earth. And Ilmarinen was the one who could forge things out of practically nothing. He was able to make this amazing mill for the mistress of the north, Lohi. He was able to create these just magical tools really out of nothing. He made a fiery eagle that was able to help him in one of his tasks, and he forged the this golden rake that helped one of the characters to rake out the body of her child from the land of the dead. So it's just like this really magical creator, the one who had all the tools that he needed to make all the things he needed to make. He had his challenges as well, but he had this amazing forge and the ability to envision what it was he wanted to make. He had his intuition and intelligence, and just this incredible talent for creation and artisanship. So it's about, being able to use one's tools toward goals in your life. He was able to use all kinds of metal. He used iron, and he used gold, and he used silver, brass or bronze. He had every kind of metal at his disposal, and the elements just really bowed to him and let themselves be molded into the shapes he wanted, because he was good with them. He was good with creating an artistic, beautiful, and useful thing. So that's, and the magician in the traditional tarot, again, has all those tools at his command. So this card is about having those tools. It's about being able to create what you need to create with the materials at hand, and using magic, using words, but in this case, a lot of it's just using his imagination to be able to see the final product before even starting. So that's Ilmarinen, and that's the person that we're looking at today in this reading as the central issue. And I'll set him right here for us to be able to see him. And then I'm going to take these Hebrunes, and I'm going to do a scatter cast where I reach into the bag and I pull out a handful and we throw them down and we see what comes up today. And whatever it is, we will read it that way. So I'm reach in to my little bag and grab a handful. I'm not going to throw them all down, but I'm going to grab a big handful of them and see what comes up. Okay. And so first thing we do is we take out the ones that are face down. Put those back in the bag. And then we take the remaining ones and turn them in a direction that I can read them. You can also read them. Maybe scooch them up so you can see them. Go, and then we'll go a little higher, and we'll see what this seems to say today. Okay, so generally when we do a reading like this, we're going to look at the central issue and determine what is the central issue. And I'm just gonna say right now, I'm gonna go with both of these because it's not clear to me which one is in the center here. So I'm gonna take them both. That's the hit I'm getting. That's the intuitive hit I'm getting right now. So looking at those two letters, we have the letter Ayin. I'm going to go with the one on top first. The letter Ayin is an eye. It is it's about sight and vision. It looks a little bit like two eye stalks with it going back to an optic nerve in the back of the brain there. So it's about vision. It's about being watched over by the divine, and it is a completion letter. So it is the number 70 in Gematria, which indicates a completion. So there are 7 days of creation, and so that indicates a completion of creation. And 10 times 7 is the number 70. So it's this ultimate manifestation of some kind of completion that's coming in. It also is the foundation of laughter. In the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, each of the letters corresponds to a foundation sort of action or function, and Ayin is the foundation of laughter, which I love. So we have this completion, we have this idea of vision, being able to see, being able to envision, like Ilmarinen here. He's able to envision what he wants to see in the world and able to complete that, and maybe with joy, with some kind of laughter. It also means, again, like being watched over by the divine. So being sort of given those God-given talents, those talents that we have to create and to see what it is we want to create, and sort of being supervised, let's say, supervised by divinity as we do those things. It is the month of Tevet, which is coming up next after this month. We're in the month of Kislev, and it turns over to Tevet at the next new moon. And it has to do with the tribe of Dan. And the tribe of Dan means judgment. It means judgment. So there's something about, again, finality. There's a judgment about that completion. Hopefully a good judgment, but whatever the case, it is a judgment. So, yeah, that's one of our central issues. And then the other one right below it is the letter Kaf. And Kaf is the palm of a hand. So we've got an eye and a palm of a hand. And the palm of a hand is about, it's about a lot of things. It's about giving and receiving. So like giving what it is yours to give and receiving what is yours to take. Being able to give when you have the resources to give, and being able to ask for help and take what you need when you need to receive as well. So that balance between giving and receiving. It's this palm of the hand, so it's about power as well, because one could use one's hand to wield power. It's the first letter of the word koach, which means power, and also the first letter of the word keter, which means crown. So it has to do with sovereignty and power as well, about extending one's hand, and also about covering the head. So keter covers the head, and kippah, which also begins with kaf, covers the head. And having power over someone, either in a sheltering or a oppressive way, can be lording something over someone's head. So it can be used for good or evil. And it is about the binary foundation of wealth and poverty. So again, giving what is appropriate to give, receiving what is appropriate to receive, not holding on too tight with one's palm of the hand to one's wealth, not holding on to it in order to remain physically wealthy but spiritually impoverished. So it's about that balance again, and about using one's hand for protection rather than oppression. It also sort of it's used twice in the word skach, which is the covering over a sukkah, which is that temporary dwelling that we use in the fall time during the harvest festival. So it's like it protects us, kind of, from the sun. It gives us shade, but it also allows us to see through toward the stars. And it is the letter that rules over the celestial body, the sun in the sky, which is interesting because here we have with Ilmarinen and the sun behind him. It is said in one of his stories that he forged the sun and the moon when the mistress of Pohjola, Louhi, hid them away. He tried to forge a new sun and a new moon in the sky. So this rules over the sun. It's like using your power to create what you need to create, the same way as the magician or Ilmarinen does, using that power to forge what you need to forge in the world. So those are our central issues: of the ayin, sight and vision, and the kaf, which is about power and creation and giving and receiving. So then we have a couple of letters that have come to the left of this, which are, say, the past. And it's interesting because they all look very similar. We have the taf and the het and the he, and they all have those sort of three lines. I find that very interesting that they all sort of have that similar shape to them. They all look like little houses or sukkahs or chuppahs or whatever. I'm going to start with the letter het, which is the furthest one in the past. So the letter het is, it's the letter that begins the word chai. So it's about life. It's about choosing life. Every day we're given the choice about whether we want to choose life or not. And that's come in the past, and it's come a little bit low. So it's maybe a challenge that we've had with making the right choices around our life. It also is a chuppah, which is a marriage canopy. So it can have to do with contracts, making a decision, a commitment to oneself, certainly to another person or to the divine. That chuppah can represent, all of those things in one. So it has to do with marriage or contracts, but it also has to do with covenants. So it's the number 8 in Gematria, and the number 8 has all kinds of connotations, not least of which is on the 8th day of a child's life, they are named and or circumcised, which is a covenant that one makes with the divine. Or, at least people have done that for millennia. This idea of this covenant with God on the 8th day for a new child. But it's also, 8 is symbolic of an infinite number, because there are 7 days in creation, and then we have this one after that. What happens after all the days are done created? Well, infinity happens. And interestingly, in the traditional tarot card of the magician, that's one of the cards that has the infinity symbol on it. It has the infinity loop. So something that's come before and maybe has been a little bit challenging is something that the idea of infinity, the idea of this connection with things that are so much greater than ourselves, outside of ourselves. That's been a challenge in the past. Or maybe a little bit of a fear about the infinite. Maybe there's been some concern about how do we connect with the infinite. It corresponds to the foundation of speech, so maybe there's been some issues with speaking, maybe in the near past, and it has to do with throat, or the gullet rather, in the body. So it can have to do with speaking, of course, but also maybe digestion. The gullet is this sort of it's an organ that exists in birds more than humans, but we have a similar space in our throat where those both the speaking and the digestion come together. So yeah, it has to do with the gullet and contracts, covenants, and darkness. So chet is the first letter of the word choshek, which means darkness, and the first instance of this letter in the Torah is in the word choshek, darkness. So there's been a little bit of challenges maybe in the past, the not too distant past, with darkness, maybe this time of year, which is very dark, maybe with some contracts or covenants that were made and or broken, and and some kind of choosing life, not, maybe having fear around the infinite, the idea of infinity. That's come in the past. And then up on the upper line, we're going to look at this letter, the letter Tav. And Tav is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it is sometimes said to be an extra letter because it's actually a stamp or a seal, like one might put a signature on a work of art. And since it is the last letter, it's said that that's just the signature of God on the creation of using the letters to create the universe. Tav is the letter that corresponds to the moon in the sky, which is interesting because we have the sun here, and Ilmarinen also forged the moon when he forged the sun. So, but the moon is about mystery. It's about just not things being shrouded in mystery. So one of the things that may have come in the past is this unknown. Again, we've got the infinite here, but this moon of unknown action or unknown direction, that maybe there hasn't been clarity around this. Not that that's a bad thing. Maybe that's a thing that's been helpful, is actually not knowing what direction to go. And so one just moves forward. Because this is above on the upper line, it makes me think that it's something that's helped. Maybe looking at the moon, maybe appreciating the moon and the cycles of the lunar cycles. Tav is the last letter in the word emet, which means truth. So it is that final seal on the idea of something true. And some say that it looks like a dalet and a nun. The dalet would be on the top part here and the nun down here. And dalet and nun together spell dan, which is about judgment again. So there's some kind of judgment, some kind of justice maybe. More judgment. Justice is a different word. This is about judgment. And maybe even death. There's just, mate means death, so it's the last letter in the word death. So judgment, the end, death, some kind of transition or transformation that's gone on before. Din, which also means judgment. And it can have to do with reincarnation or past lives being stamped onto us in some way. This impression that's come in the past. And so maybe some kind of reincarnation thing, that there's been death and then like maybe ancestral trauma that's been stamped onto our DNA, and trying to figure out what to do with that. So, and it has the binary foundation of sovereignty and slavery. So somewhere along that continuum has been an issue that's come right before here. We're like, where are we here? Are we feeling our sovereignty? Are we feeling like we are worthy and sovereign in ourselves? Or are we feeling enslaved to our habits, behaviors that have come just before now? And then a little further down on our reading in the immediate past, we have the letter He. And the letter He is about presence. It's about remaining present and being aware of what we're doing. It is the first letter of the word Hineni, which means here I am. And it's the answer that one gives to the divine when one hears one's name being called. We may say, Hineni, here I am available and ready for service. And this is very low on the line, right down at the bottom here. So it sounds to me like there's some issue with being able to remain present for oneself, for others in your life, being maybe afraid of showing up, being afraid to answer Hineni. It's the number 5 in Gematria, so sometimes it has to do with artisanship, using all 5 fingers to create in the world. So it has a little bit to do with action in the body, but more about artistry. And again, being afraid to create one's own reality, being afraid to listen to the divine, to show up and be present and create what one is asked to create in the world. So if you've been having some challenges with that, interestingly, it also has to do with sight. So it's the foundation of sight in the Sefer Yetzirah, and the number 5 corresponds to that because the word light shows up 5 times in the story of creation. So we have light and we have sight and vision around that. And it also shows up in the divine name. So the divine name, which is spelled Yud He Vav He. So we have it in there twice. We have 2 He's in the divine name. So one might say that half of divinity is showing up and being present. And if that has been challenging for you in your recent circumstances, not being able to show up, then maybe there's been some missing out on connection with divinity. And as we're going through this period of time, with now being able to see and also being able to potentially give and receive and use one's hands appropriately to shelter over or to give what needs to be given and receive what needs to be received. We're moving forward into this time of Lamed. And Lamed, I would say, is straight on the path line into the future here. And Lamed is about reaching up. So it's the one letter that reaches above the line in Hebrew. And it is said to be trying to connect with divinity. So one's reaching up with heart toward the divine. Lev being the word that begins with Lamed, meaning heart. So aspiration of the heart. Also teaching and learning. What are we learning here? What is it we've learned from our situation? So it's about elevation of the heart. It's about education in sense of both teaching and learning. But it's also the foundation of action in the world. So again, we have more action, like with the 5 fingers, and we have the it corresponds to the intestines in the body. So it's interesting because it kind of looks like intestines. It looks like a digestive tract. And so it's about taking in, digesting, and absorbing food or information, which is what I guess education is sort of about. It's about reaching up with heart, aspiration, teaching, and learning. And that's coming up in the future, that we've got this potential for learning a lesson through whatever it is we're doing here. And again, action in the body, action with the fingers here, artisanship. So doing something active in the world, making something with Ilmarinen here, the smith, with the tools at hand. So we've got the palm of the hand here, we've got the 5 fingers of the hand here, and we've got the heart here, and the eyes here, the vision, the sight, but also light and sight down here, contracts and commitments, and just choosing life, and this completion, this idea of some ultimate completion of a stamp and a seal and a judgment, hopefully for good as we move forward. And I'm also going to pull out today one of my Nordic runes just to get some clarity about what kind of advice for the future have we got going on for you who chose Ilmarinen today. And I'm going to pull out this one right at the bottom. And we have the letter Algis. Algis is the elk. It is it's about protection. It's about being watched over. So very similar, actually, both in shape and meaning to the Ain. We have Algis. It's a spirit. It's an elk, but it's also spirit. It's protection, being awakened, being able to see. It's a shield and defense. It's about the spirit life, being connected to the spirit, as well as connection with the divine. So some kind of divine protection and also connection with the divine, reaching up with heart, like the Lev here as well. So here you have it, Algis, as advice of what to do is to protect, trust in the protection from divinity, and also reach up to connect with divinity. And as a final thing, I'm going to pull out one of these oracle cards just to give a little bit of a message for you at the end. And I've got 2. Okay, well, you get 2 today then. And these are your 2. Maintenance. That's great. It says the earthly realm begs your devoted attention. Explore self-care rituals to unlock your next level. Be willing to find an enjoyable way to do mundane tasks. Maintenance, that's lovely. Sounds very much like showing up and being present with the hay down here, Hineni. That's one of your oracle cards, and the other one says thrive. Not too different. Imagine an easeful, prosperous outcome. Create a pathway to resources that support your vision. Release any tendencies to assume a struggle is necessary. So I love that. Create a pathway to resources, like Ilmarinen uses all the resources that support your vision. Again, vision here and vision here. And Ilmarinen being able to see what it is that he wants to make before even starting. So finding a way to thrive in this situation, to maintain your attention and self-care, and through all of this, using all of your tools and resources to create what needs to be created, to see what you need to see, use your hands appropriately, and reach up with heart toward connection with divinity. And for those of you who chose Ilmarinen, I appreciate you sticking with me through all of this, and I hope you have a lovely evening, and I will see you again next time.